Tanzimat. The Ottoman Empire had a problem most empires have. It had an identity problem. What did it mean to be an Ottoman? The Ottoman Empire was about 75% Muslim, 20% Christian, and 5% other religions. It was also a melting pot of ethnicities including Turkish, Arab, Armenian, Greek, Assyrian, Kurdish, Serbian, and many more. With so many different groups, Islam was the only thing uniting the empire. However, by the 19th century, some Ottoman intellectuals began to question Islam's place in the empire's future. Many of them believed Islam's usefulness had run its course and it was time to imitate the secularism of the European powers. In 1839, Sultan Abdul-Majid I signed 2 edicts ordering a series of reforms known as Tanzimat. Tanzimat was meant to modernize the empire and make it more secular, yet retain its Islamic identity. Tanzimat dismantled the old feudal system. Regions that were once controlled by nobles or feudal lords were now run by governors appointed by Istanbul. Tanzimat established a centralized education department. This put education under state control and took it away from the religious community. Tanzimat also secularized the legal system, undermining the Sharia upon which the Ottoman Empire had always operated. The empire hoped a secular legal system that applied the law equally to all people would help foster a unified Ottoman identity. The Ottoman financial system was also revamped to be more in line with Western financial practices. All these reforms did bring some improvements to the empire. Several new educational institutions and universities were built, helping to raise the empire's overall literacy rate. Modern taxation policies ended much of the rampant corruption that had plagued the empire for so long. Improved taxation meant more revenues, which the empire used to modernize its military. But these reforms also had unintended consequences. Implementing a secular legal system did not unite the various groups. If anything, it drove them further apart. One of the rules of the Sharia is that the Sharia cannot be imposed on non-Muslims. Hence, before Tanzimat, religious minorities in the Ottoman Empire were governed by the laws of their own local religious communities. But with the removal of the Sharia, all citizens were now governed by a single secular legal framework dictated by Istanbul. Having lost their autonomy, religious and ethnic minorities resented the Ottoman identity the government tried to impose upon them. Before long, Greek, Arab, Armenian, Serbian, and even Turkish nationalism had divided the empire into various ethnic factions. And even though the Ottoman military had improved, it still continued to suffer defeat at the hands of the Russians. All of these reforms cost money. And now that the Sharia was no longer a factor, the Ottoman government borrowed liberally at high interest rates, leading to staggering amounts of public debt. By the 1860s, the empire was over 100 million pounds sterling in debt to various entities. The interest payments alone accounted for nearly half the empire's annual tax revenues. The new Ottoman education system sent young people to study in Europe. They came back with even more ideas to fix the empire. They believed Tanzimat had not gone far enough and called for further political reform. They wanted to establish a constitution and a parliament and relegate the Sultan to figurehead status. The Ottoman Sultan was not in favor of these reforms. Sultan Abdul Aziz resisted these new ideas and persecuted these young intellectuals. The intellectuals went underground, formed secret societies like the Young Ottomans, and continued to advocate for a constitutional monarchy. Crop failures, mounting public debt, lavish spending, and a Bulgarian uprising led to the removal of Sultan Abdulaziz in 1876. He committed suicide a few days later, though foul play is also suspected. Abdulaziz was replaced by his nephew Murad, who was deposed 3 months later due to insanity. Murad's younger brother, Abdul Hamid II, became the next Sultan of the Ottoman Empire in 1876. The young Ottomans supported Abdul Hamid's ascendancy on the grounds that he would enact a new constitution. Abdul Hamid complied, and the empire's first constitution and parliament came into being later that year. But simply creating a constitution and a parliament did not fix the empire's problems. In 1877, Russia used the Ottoman Empire's brutal suppression of the Bulgarian uprising as an excuse to declare war. The Ottomans were defeated and lost all of their territory in the Balkans. Abdul Hamid blamed the defeat on the new political reforms. He abolished the constitution, disbanded parliament, and ruled the empire as an autocrat for the next 30 years. Sultan Abdul Hamid II continued to push the empire's modernization efforts, but he was suspicious of Western interference. Though he did not reverse all of the Tanzimat reforms, he preferred to emphasize the Islamic identity of the empire. And for a while, the empire experienced some stability and improvement. Abdul Hamid oversaw the construction of several institutions of higher learning and railways. He managed to avoid further conflicts with Russia, and he worked hard to lower the empire's public debt. The Ottomans owed so much money, its European creditors forced them to create a government agency to manage its debt. The Ottoman Public Debt Administration was run by Westerners and managed all Ottoman financial affairs. Let that sink in. The Ottoman Empire's financial system was controlled by European foreigners. Sultan Abdul Hamid II did not trust the young Ottomans nor their reforms. His secret police dismantled these reformist organizations, forcing many of them to go into exile or operate in secrecy. The secret organizations continued to work against Sultan Abdul Hamid II both inside and outside the empire. And they also became more radical. They infiltrated the military. They adopted foreign ideologies such as Marxism, humanism, and Freemasonry. They dropped the name Young Ottomans for the more nationalistic label Young Turks. The Young Turks was not a single entity nor an organized movement. It was various groups working in secret to bring down the Sultan's government.